Whoa! Old people. It's me, Tom Geia, just walking through. This is my father, Thomas Joseph Geia, a Bulgaman man, a family leader, a community leader, a Murray man. That means an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander man from Queensland. My father would walk through the rainforest with us on our island home, and he would call out to the unseen realm to identify his voice and his persona. Because we believe that those in the unseen realm hear us. The metaphysical is very real to us, and that when they hear our voice, they would make way and let us through their country. And our intention has always to walk through, to do no harm. So it was wonderful to hear those birds singing, because as I closed my eyes, I could imagine my father walking through the rainforest and us following us. And he would stop at specific places and hold his hand up, and all us kids would shuffle up and we'd all stop because we knew what was going to happen. He would then call out to the old people, the spirits of our ancestors, the old people that have gone past or have passed on. And he would say, "It's me, Tom Geia," to identify himself. We're just walking through. Now, when I think about my father and the way he walked as a leader, I identify that he not only physically led us and cared for us, but he also led us and cared for us in the metaphysical, always with our well-being in mind. And his leadership today resonates with me, because that's the way that I have learned to lead. And that's the way I see Indigenous leadership today. To walk strong in the physical and the metaphysical, and to do no harm, but to lead your people. Who here knows about Palm Island or has heard of Palm Island? Can you put your hands up? Well, there's a few of you. So I'm just going to take you on a little history trail and tell you a little bit about my island, which you see up there on the screen. Palm Island is a discrete Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community in North Queensland. It's 65 kilometres off the coast of Townsville, northeast of Townsville. It's a very beautiful place, nestled in the waters of the Great Barrier Reef. Its population is around 3,000 to 4,000 people. Beautiful geographically, but not a really beautiful history, which I want to talk a little bit about today. Palm Island was gazetted by the Queensland Government in 1914 as an Aboriginal reserve. In 1918, the first people that went to Palm Island were relocated from a place called Hull River, which was ravaged by a cyclone, so they moved the small community over there. That was the first of many people that were moved to Palm Island by the Queensland Government. In 1918, there was the removal orders came into place that the Queensland Government enacted under legislation. Now, this legislation was called the Protection of the Aboriginals and the Prevention of the Sale of Opium Act of 1897. I'll just repeat that again. The Protection of the Aboriginals and the Prevention of the Sale of Opium Act. Aboriginal people and the prevention of the sale of opium were inextricably linked at that time. and it still is, but that's a story for another day. Before I go on, I want to recall how my father used to call out, and I want to call out a welcome into the unseen realm here and acknowledge the Ngunnawal people of this country, the old people, the elders past, the elders present, and the young Ngunnawal people, the leaders of the future. We have many young people in our community who are leaders, and there are many people like me, not only on Palm Island, but all around our communities in Australia, that strive and have a desire to have strong leadership, to lead our people with integrity and truth, but to lead in partnership with you. But in the time of the Act, those partnerships were not really possible. That legislation controlled Aboriginal lives completely, down to who you could marry, where you could move, who you could talk to. My community, the name of Palm Island became synonymous with fear. The name Palm Island could curb any Aboriginal's behaviour on other communities because there was such fear. You see, it was surrounded by water. It was a penal colony from the time of 1918 right up into the early 80s. Not many people know that this Act was the umbrella for many policies that controlled Aboriginal lives in Queensland right up into the late 70s and to the early 80s. Now, my father and my mother and myself, we were born under that Act. So that Act were our parents. The government became our parents. Now, I talked about control, and one of the most diabolical agents of control was to strip us of our identity. The image that you see on the screen is a genealogy of my father, Thomas. It was developed by a visiting anthropologist in the late 1930s. My father was a young boy then, or a young teenager, and the anthropologist measured his head, and that indicated his intelligence, his IQ, and he looked at his skin colour, and that indicated whether he was half caste, quarter caste, 1/8 caste, what percentage of Aboriginal he was. And these information then informed the way governments interacted with us or saw us and how we fitted into civilisation in Australia. However, my father rejected every form of imposed identity on himself. He didn't see himself as a quarter caste Aboriginal man. He saw himself as a Murray man, a Bulgaman man, a Palm Island man. And he never gave in to any form of pseudo-imposed identity. I just want to tell you, in line with this identity, my experience. Now, I said the Act, it went up into the 80s. And in the 90s, I had a son who's here in the audience tonight, Daniel. My son has mixed heritage. He's very fair, and if you see us out in the audience, after this you'll notice the difference between us. But I remember in the 90s driving in Melbourne where his father's family lived, and all of a sudden I was gripped with this fear. I had a fear that somebody's going to take my child away from me because of his skin colour. I've had many comments when he was a baby, people asking me, "Is that really your baby?" And I would say, "Yes, he's my baby, but he's white and you're not." But he was my baby, and that just sort of demonstrates the legacy that these policies have left, and they still resonate with us today, with many in community. Many are walking that journey of healing. And sometimes it comes out in a different way in their behaviour in community. But there is a history behind that behaviour. But now, Palm Island has become united. Over 46 tribes were sent there under forced removal, but now that's our home. There, I am 5th generation, born on Palm Island. We are now the Bulgman people, which means many tribes, one people. The old people that came there were sent there, carried with them a vision for the future because they knew they weren't going to go back to their traditional country. And they passed that vision on to us. There are many old people in Australia, our history makers, our Indigenous leaders, who have, I liken it to a river, an underground surging water that's been building and building. And these old people, their voices and their deeds have been a part of this river, and they will continue on. People like Truganini, like Fanny Cochrane-Smith, like Vincent Lingiari, like William Cooper, William Barak, like Charles Perkins, like Tom and Betty Geia, my parents. And there are many more in our communities, leaders, community leaders whose intellectual prowess was played out into the dust of our communities and left their footprints for us to follow. And I believe those leaders, they knew that we couldn't go back to pre-1788. We had to move forward. They had the momentum. They carried that within their spirit and they passed it on to us. We couldn't be passive recipients of what was given to us. We had to be active in building our future. My father always said education was the key. Education was the key for us. They made relationships with non-Indigenous people. They made friends and allies who stood beside them as they walked forward. This image that you see before you is my creation. I'm not a great artist, but that's the map of my community, Palm Island. And that's a jutting out of one of the land. And I've made it into a foot because that's how I see us, as stepping out into the future. Many of us are wanting to step out. But sometimes we hear the voices of negativity in social media, on Facebook, in the media. Sometimes those voices come from this very place of representation, Parliament House in Canberra. They distract us from the bigger picture of building a future together. We need to build together. This is our nation. This is our nation, both you and I. Your people have come here and made this your home. My people have always been here. It's been our home. But now we are like this. Our stories are interwoven now. Your story became my story. On that first landing and when that flag was raised, you became part of my story over the generations. And my people became part of your story. So I believe that to walk forward as a nation, we need to respect each other's story, understand each other. This is a wonderful country with a great future, with a richness of both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, and others who have come to know this country as your home. I'd like to invite you to think, to stop, think, and reflect on how you see us, how you've learned to see us, but from this time, how differently you might see us. And I hold out my hand in invitation to you all, as a leader, as an Indigenous woman, to walk with me, to listen to my story, to see how it blends with your story. I started this talk with the voice of my father. I'm going to finish it with my voice, because we are here. The water is rising, friends. We are here. We are not going to go away. We are not going to die out like those policies thought we would. We are here to build and to build with you. Dare to allow us to lead our people the way that we can. Whoa! Australia! I am my father's daughter, Lynore Geia, and I am here. The First Nations people are here. Always was and always will be. You are here. We are all here. Walk with us. Walk with us as we build momentum to lead our people, to lead our community. Walk with us as we make Australia rich.